Hey everyone, welcome to the show. We all love those heartwarming stories. The ones about orphans, right? Those brave little souls facing the world alone, but then boom, happy endings and all that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, those classic tales.
But have you ever stopped to think about what those stories might be hiding? What if the comforting narrative we cling to is actually a kind of a smokescreen, obscuring a history that's way more complicated and full of hardship?
It's a really interesting question, and it's something that Kristen Martin tackles head-on in her book, The Sun Won't Come Out Tomorrow.
The sun won't come out tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, and it's nonfiction, so she dives into this idea by blending her own personal experiences with really in-depth historical research to kind of dissect the myths and the realities surrounding orphanhood in America.
So we're not talking about another fictional heartwarming story here. This is real.
No, this is a deep dive into history.
This is looking at the history of orphanages, foster care, the whole child welfare system here in the U.S.
Yeah.
And she ties all of that to her own life because she lost both of her parents when she was a child.
Exactly. And you can see right away that her experience doesn't really line up with the kind of romanticized portrayals we see in, pop culture.
Like those classic stories.
Yeah, you think of stories like Little Orphan Annie, right? It all seems so simple and straightforward in those stories. Like, oh, you lose your parents, but then you quickly find a loving family who adopts you and everything's great.
Right, like it's all tied up in a nice little bow.
Yeah, but Martin's book paints a very different picture. And she backs it up with historical context. She talks about institutions, the orphan train movement, which we should definitely get into more later, and, the whole evolution of foster care, which is a complex system with its own set of problems.
So this book, The Sun Won't Come Out Tomorrow, it really takes those classic orphan stories, those tropes, and it holds them up to the light of history, right? It's like asking, where did these narratives even come from, and what are they actually hiding?
Right.
And then it digs into all these different aspects like orphanages, how they developed and then declined. What happened with those orphan trains? How did foster care become what it is today?
Yeah.
And then there's this whole layer of biases within the child welfare system that have been around for so long.
It's fascinating stuff. And what makes this book so powerful is that Martin doesn't just throw a bunch of facts at you.
Yeah.
She weaves in her own story, the loss she felt, the uncertainty, the way society viewed her. It personalizes this whole topic, which could easily feel very academic otherwise.
Makes it real.
Absolutely. And she even says in the book, I'm not a symbol. I'm a real person who lived through this. So you're not just reading about historical trends. You're seeing how these systems and attitudes directly impacted real children, including her.
Now, as I was going through this book, one of the things that really struck me was how it forces you to rethink all those familiar orphan stories we've grown up with. You start to see how they're often more about wishful thinking than reality.
I think that's so important. Those stories often promote a very individualistic view of resilience, Like an orphan just needs to find the right adoptive family and then they can overcome anything. But Martin's work really highlights how that perspective ignores all the bigger societal factors at play.
Right. It's not just about finding the right family.
Yeah, things like poverty, lack of support, systemic inequalities, all those things contribute to children becoming orphaned in the first place.
You can't just ignore all of that.
Exactly.
Another thing that I thought was so well done was how seamlessly she integrated her own personal narrative with all this really thorough historical research. It wasn't like one was overpowering the other. They worked together to create this really engaging and informative read. You connect with her story on an emotional level, and then the historical context gives you that deeper understanding.
Yeah, you feel for her on a personal level, but then you also get that wider perspective.
And it makes you think about the bigger picture.
I agree. I think that personal thread really grounds the historical analysis. Like when she talks about her parents' illnesses, it's a stark reminder that we're talking about real people here.
Yeah.
It humanizes these issues.
Like it makes you realize that behind every statistic about orphan children, there's a story of loss and vulnerability.
It's not just numbers, it's people's lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it was crucial how the book tackles these often uncomfortable issues like systemic problems and societal biases that have shaped the experiences of dependent children in America for decades.
Oh, yeah.
It really digs into how race and class have played a huge role in determining who gets support and what kind of care they receive.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, you can see how the approaches to caring for orphans have evolved over time, right? But they often reflect the social and economic ideologies of the time. So it makes you wonder, are those historical biases still present in our child welfare system today?
That's a big question to think about.
Yeah, it's something to consider.
Now, full disclosure, there are a couple of things about the book that, while they weren't deal breakers, are worth mentioning, I think. Just to
Yeah,
be honest,
sure.
the amount of historical detail in the book, it can feel a little overwhelming at times. Like, it's clear she did her research, but
Yeah.
there were definitely moments when I needed to just, like, pause and process all the information.
Yeah, I get that. It covers a long period and goes really deep into the policies. So if you're looking for a quick overview, this might not be the book for you. But if you really want to dive deep into the history, it's all there.
And while she does include glimpses into individual stories, the focus is definitely more on the systemic issues. And while that's important, I did find myself wanting more of those individual voices to really see how those systems impact people on a personal level.
I see what you mean. It's always a challenge to find that balance, right? I mean, to show the systemic patterns you need to talk about the broader trends and the policies. But those individual stories add so much emotional weight.
It's like the difference between seeing the forest and seeing the individual trees.
Exactly.
So overall, taking everything into account, the research, her personal story, the way it challenges your assumptions about orphanhood, I'd give The Sun Won't Come Out Tomorrow a 4 out of 5 stars.
That's a solid rating.
Yeah, it's a really important book, especially if you want to understand the complexities of this topic. You know, the history behind these simplified stories we hear about orphans and the challenges our child welfare system still faces today.
And I think this deep dive into the book should really make you, the listener, think about how all of this history still shapes our understanding and our approaches to supporting vulnerable children today.
It's a conversation that needs to continue.
Definitely.
If you're interested in exploring this further, we've included a link to The Sun Won't Come Out Tomorrow by Kristen Martin on Amazon. You can find it in the description below.
We highly recommend checking it out if you want to learn more.
And hey, if you enjoyed this discussion and maybe learned a thing or two along the way, hit that like button and subscribe to the show.
It really helps us keep bringing you these deep dives.
We'd also love to hear what resonated with you. What was your favorite part of the discussion? Or maybe something that surprised you? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
We love hearing from you all.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep learning.
And we'll see you then.